Hello, Lisa here. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if this is your first time stopping by. Today we are going to be kicking off a new series on my channel that Peggy helped me come up with and helped me name, called Deck Roulette. I'll tell you what that's all about, and we'll get started in just a second. First, just a reminder, in case you're new here, hello, my name is Lisa. I am a deck creator, content creator, and an author. I will have a graphic up on the screen with all of the things that you can currently grab and where you can grab them. My most recent deck, Unicorn's Journey Oracle, was successfully funded on Kickstarter and is due out in the world in the next couple of months, certainly before the end of the year. So keep an eye out for updates on this if you are interested. But links to all of my work is always down in the description box below where you can check it out. Today we're going to be doing Deck Roulette. Now here's the thing. I wanted to create some new series on the channel that are going to allow me to play with the things I already have in my collection and also highlight those things. When I first started my YouTube channel, this tarot related YouTube channel, I used to do a series called Weekly Deck Reviews, and some of you may have noticed that I recently revived that series in the form of monthly deck reviews. And monthly deck reviews is where I basically show you all the things I've been working with for the month and how they've been working out. And it gives me a chance to sort of evaluate how decks are working for me, but also to share them with you guys and let you know how they work in practice, not just first impressions, walkthroughs, that kind of thing. Deck Roulette was a series that came about because I was telling Peggy that what I wanted to come up with was a series where I could play with what I have, kind of like that old weekly deck reviews. Because back then, I would basically randomly select the tarot and randomly select an oracle to work with each week. Not every single time, but a lot of the time. And I loved the kind of crazy deck combos that came about because of that. So we were brainstorming, and she came up with this idea for Deck Roulette, and I was like, yes, this is perfect. This is exactly what I want to do. So if some of you may not know, but I actually keep my list of decks in a spin the wheel app. Now, this is literally called wheelofnames.com, and you can associate it with like a Google account or whatever. And then what you do, I'll just show you what this looks like, is you can paste in your list of decks. Now, I have a tarot wheel, an oracle wheel. I also have a Lenormand wheel, but you can paste in your list of decks and then it generates a wheel. Now, you can also customize it with colors and whatever picture you want to put in the center and blah, blah, blah. But what I like to do is I just updated this actually before I filmed this, before I came on here to film this. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to spin the wheel for a tarot, and then I'm going to spin the wheel for an oracle, and we're going to play with those two decks specifically together, like right now on the spot. That's the plan. So I'm going to make this full screen, and we're going to spin the wheel, and we're just going to see what we get. Hopefully it's something I actually have here. There's one deck that lives at work. Have I jinxed it? Let's see. Oh, the Pocket Crow Tarot. Okay. All right, all right, all right. That's right here. All right. Now, this may include some things that I have recently put like on the chopping block as part of my collection series, but that's okay. Now, what you don't want to do if you're using this wheel the way that I am, you don't want to hit remove because that will take it off your list. So I just hit close. And now I'm going to open up my Oracle list. And I'm going to make sure that, oops, hello? Exit full screen. Okay, and then I'm going to shuffle it. You can also shuffle it as many times as you want, but I'm going to shuffle it a couple of times and then make it full screen. And we're going to see what oracle deck we're going to play with. So we have Crow Tarot Pocket, and it's going to get put with... Oh, hey! Wait, that's actually kind of a cool combo. The Thistle Down Oracle? Okay, all right, all right. Okay, that was an unexpectedly kind of harmonious pairing. So let's see. Now, I have not paired these two decks before, but let's talk about them. So this is the Crow Tarot Pocket Edition. I had the full size of this back in the day, and I'm not sure this is a deck that's even going to stay in my collection. I picked this up because we have balcony crows. We have crows that come and visit, and I'm quite fond of them, and I thought it would be kind of cool to have a Crow Tarot because of that, but that's literally the reason I picked this up, and because I'm kind of a sucker for a pocket deck, and this is like about the size of a tarot deck in a tin. So for reference, here is, again, a standard size, I say again, like I've already done this, but this is a standard size oracle card from my Unicorn's Journey Oracle. Sorry, standard tarot sized card in my Unicorn's Journey Oracle, and then this is the Crow Pocket Tarot. So it's a really good size. Let me put my own deck away. It's a really great little size. Now, that is, if you've never seen this deck is by MJ Coulinane. Did I flip it upside down? Oh, interesting. I'm like already noticing that I've really started to notice that I need my glasses more often is the punchline there. And this deck makes my eyes go funny a little bit at this size, which when I got it, that wasn't as noticeable. But like, it's really cute. It's crows. It's crow behavior. It's a beautiful deck. I have had a tendency to not keep any MJ Cullinane decks that have come into my collection, and especially at the more standard size, I find that some of the warpiness, I don't know how to describe it, but there's sort of like a filter effect over the images, and some of that just kind of like does something funny in my brain, especially at the bigger size. The small size, it's a little less noticeable, but I still see it. We're gonna put it through its paces, see how it feels to read with this in conjunction with the Thistledown Oracle. So let's take a look at the Thistledown Oracle. Now this is a Three Trees Tarot deck. This is the newest edition, so I have to shuffle the heck out of it because this is the new bordered edition that Stephanie and Adam came out with earlier this year. It's fairly new to the market still, but it's got these cute reversible squirrel backs. I love this deck. It's a really nice size. So let me again show you, I don't know why I put it away, but let's show you again the standard tarot size card next to Thistledown, because it's like basically tarot width, just it's like maybe a hair thinner, but no, it's basically the same width. It's basically the same width and just a little bit shorter. It's a great little size. And I actually like oracles that are tarot size or even a little smaller. It's nice to sometimes have a bigger one, but I love it at this size. But the neat thing about this is that I feel like even though this one's got white borders and this one's got these tan borders, we do see, I'm pretty sure, we see some crows, yeah, in this deck. So that's kind of like oddly harmonious, which is kind of fun. So the goal of Deck Roulette is to put these two decks together and sort of see how they read, how I feel about them individually and together. So here's what I'm going to do to sort of test that theory. I'm going to use them each individually for a quick little energy obstacle advice and sort of talk through my reading, like sort of a general reading for whoever it's meant for, whoever stumbles on this video or whoever feels like the message resonates with them. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the oracle separately. And then I'm going to put them together and see how we feel. Okay, so let's start off with, this was in order, so I'm shuffling it extra. Let's start off with the Crow Tarot, and then we'll pull this in. All right, so this is on that US Games cardstock, so it's kind of stiff, but at this pocket size, it's not too bad, but it does not bridge. Like it's that kind of cardboardy, I don't know how to describe it. US Games cardstock can be a little bitey at the edges. I don't know how else to explain that. I find it nice most of the time. Like it doesn't really bother me, but at this smaller size, it feels like extra stiff to me. Okay, I'm going to give this a couple more shuffles. So I'm going to pull Energy Obstacle Advice with just the Crow Tarot. And if I remember correctly, this one feels a lot more like, kind of like a Rider-Waite-Smith clone. But let's just see. I say clone, but I mean like I feel like it follows the Rider-Waite-Smith. All right, so our energy card is the Five of Swords. So in person, here's what I'm noticing. When I first pulled this, it felt busy. Like in the way that collage decks can sometimes feel busy, like it was hard for me to immediately see what was happening in the card or even spot the Roman numeral or like identify the card. First glance, just first impressions, I noticed that. So our energy is Five of Swords. Let's just actually dip into this little guidebook and see what it says. And then I will put it all together. So Five of Swords. Why do we start with the quartz? I don't like it when they do that. Okay, we're going all the way backwards. Okay. Five of Swords. The victorious crow holds the swords of those he defeated. On the surface, the victory may look positive, but in the end could lead to loneliness and despair. The Five of Swords denotes a hard-fought battle that you won, but the cost may end up being higher than expected. Could be a loss of friendship at the expense of being right, or a conflict that will leave you feeling isolated. So we're looking at that sort of like, you may have won, but at what cost kind of energy. So the energy of the situation is sort of like a defeat that doesn't feel good, or like a win that doesn't feel good, or being on the other side of somebody who maybe won something that doesn't feel great, right? I feel like I should zoom in. I'm going to zoom in a bit just so you can see the card better. Okay, so there's our energy. So now we're looking for obstacle. Now the obstacle card is one that I don't pull a reversed card or anything, but I treat the obstacle as the reversed energy. So I'm looking for, I guess, the more shadowy interpretation of the card, or how that card could be read as an obstacle. So we have the Knight of Pentacles. Now, when I see the Knight of Pentacles and I think obstacle, I think of being sort of stubborn and rigid. The Knight of Pentacles can be very steadfast and very grounded, but this sort of shadowy side of that is that they can be very rigid, stubborn, and can kind of have a tendency to sort of dig in their heels and not make a lot of progress. So here I'm seeing a lot of like ego. I'm seeing a lot of like, haha, I won, and a lot of stubbornness, and perhaps not seeing the true cost of that victory. And then finally we have the advice. So for whomever this reading is meant for, if this is you, or if you see your situation in this, what is the advice to get out of or get past or around that obstacle, to sort of get through this situation? And we have Judgment. This is such a strong message. I'm reading this more in a rote way. I'm not getting a lot of specifically inspiring messages, like imagery, I guess you could say, to take this in a direction that is particularly like inspiring. I'm definitely reading in a more rote way, like recalling my memory of what the card means or leading into my personal interpretation. But Judgment for me is a call to rise up or level up. So if you want to get yourself out of the situation, if this reading is speaking to you, it seems like the situation you're in, then the answer, the advice for you is to be the best version of yourself you can be in this situation, to get out of this place of needing to be right and instead be the best you, the best version of you that you can be in order to get through this particular conflict or to heal the rift that is there between maybe you and another. So that's how I would interpret that as a combo. And what I'm noticing right away, just sort of like playing with this, is that it feels very rote. So actually, before I pull in Thistle down, because again, this is sort of an opportunity for me to evaluate these decks and just experiment with them. So I'm going to zoom us back out, and I'm going to throw a quick Celtic cross, because that's a great way for me to feel through a deck to see if I'm getting anything, like how I feel about the patterns it creates on the table, things like that. So I'm just going to lay it out messy and see how I feel. And then again, we're going to try it in we're going to try do the same thing with Thistle down, and then we're going to put them together. Okay, so we've ended up with the Five of Wands. How interesting that a conflict card came out in the center again. And then crossing that, we have Page of Swords. Unconscious, we have Queen of Swords. Conscious, we have the Lovers. Okay, again, I'm getting the same situation coming through. It feels like it's echoing the first reading. Recent past was the Nine of Cups. So there was like a lot of sense of emotional fulfillment and contentedness in the past. But coming up in the future, we have King of Wands. This feels more solitary, more ego driven. And then over to the side here, we have internal influences, Two of Wands. So it's sort of like stay in the comfort zone or explore outward kind of energy. The Hanged Man, the external influence is like we have to wait, like we're stuck in a state of suspension. We can't make a lot of change to the situation right now. Greatest hope and greatest fear is the Page of Cups. This is about vulnerability. This person, whoever is dealing with this situation, is really struggling. We can see that in the rigid cards in the center. Page of Swords crossing the Five of Wands. It's like you want to know more, you're curious, but your desire to win or compete is like winning out over that. Subconsciously, the Queen of Swords is like, can be, again, that very kind of boxed in, rigid, this is the way kind of energy. But on the conscious level, they want connection. This person wants connection. They're just struggling to find it. And they've had that connection in the past. They've had that emotional fulfillment in the past, but they're driven more strongly by ego, the desire to win, to be in charge, that kind of thing, to be in control. Two of Wands, again, a call between comfort zone and venturing into new territory, a sense of stuckness or having to sort of be in a state of pause. Our greatest hope, greatest fear, Page of Cups. Again, there's that vulnerability, that openness, believing in the good in people or in situations can be both a beautiful thing that we want more of, but also something that terrifies us. The key to the outcome is the Two of Cups, which is about balanced and healthy connection. So whoever this reading is for, it's like the real focus here is about like putting people above prizes, by which I mean people above ego prizes. That's kind of the overall message. Now, I was able to read that just fine. But I'm reading the flow of the situation and the question. I'm, again, not getting anything jumping out at me from the imagery that feels particularly inspiring. Like it works, it functions beautifully as a deck, but it's not like exciting me, if that makes any sense. So that's interesting. That's interesting. That's interesting. So again, this is going to be an opportunity for me to kind of like review the decks that I have as they come up in this practice, and then also to see how they play with others, if they play well with others. So we're going to do the same thing. Now, this is an Oracle deck. I'm probably not going to throw a Celtic Cross with it, but I am going to do an energy obstacle advice and see how it feels all by itself. And then we're going to put them together and see if that changes anything or how they work together and see what you think. So Thistledown Oracle. So this one is mass market. I have both of these decks linked down below. This one is an indie deck. And everything Stephanie and Adam create together is absolute magic. I recommend any deck that they've created. I have all of them, and I adore them all for different reasons. Each has its own unique energy. But Thistledown feels like it lives in the Oak Ash and Thorn and Smoke Ash and Embers universe, and you can see that in the design now with the redesign of the cards, how she made them much more cohesive, I guess, to kind of really have the same look and feel across all three. But I think this works well with Heartwood as well. Anyway, back to the point. Energy. Memory. Ooh. So there's a situation here about how does memory play into the existing situation. I'm going to pull the other cards and then we're going to see. Release. I don't often do an energy obstacle advice with just Oracle, so this is interesting. And awareness. So let me think through this. So, oh, this is, wow, this is really beautiful. This like spirit of the fox being literally like released. There's like this shadow self. Oh, that's beautiful. Okay. So sitting in the energy, we have memory. And there's this sort of like, almost this feels a little bit like clinging to the past or like trying to live the present through the filter of the past, or placing the past as a filter over the present. This can be a number of things. We could be projecting something onto a current situation from the past, like trying to compare a current loved one, friend, family member, spouse, partner against like somebody from our past, who like an ex or a past relationship, an old friend. And that can be good and bad. We could be holding somebody to a standard because it's somebody else's standard. We could equally be waiting for somebody to hurt us because we've been hurt in the past by the same person. So this can represent to me walls that are coming up in relationship, the ways in which we are painting we literally are holding a paintbrush that is dipped in the paint of the past, and we're brushing that paint over our current present situation. So to me, this is more of a warning card of like, be careful, because memory is beautiful. We want to honor memories, but we don't want them to taint or alter the colors of the present. And then we have the obstacle card. And I think the thing that's keeping whoever needs to hear this message stuck in the past is that clinging energy. When I see memory and release next to each other, and release is the obstacle, this is what we're struggling to do. We're struggling to let go. We're struggling to like release the grip that the past has on us. And that struggle is keeping us stuck, right? So, or whoever needs to hear this message. So the obstacle here is that stuckness, that not ability to release. Something I'm noticing right away compared to working with the Crow Tarot is I'm working with the keyword and the imagery. Now that could be because I work really well with decks that have a jumping off keyword and really evocative art, but it's a combo. I'm really moved by this. Like, this feels like to me a releasing ritual almost that this character is doing. This releasing of this past self or this ghost self. There's a sense of forgiveness in that, and peace, and like cord cutting, and it feels very potent. But I'm getting all of that from the image and then the word release in combination. But anyways, so just pausing to kind of think about how this deck is affecting me as I'm going through. And then we have our advice card, which is awareness. And we have this sweet little hedgehog who's looking at their environment and kind of maybe perhaps looking for any potential dangers. This is what's interesting. When we're afraid that a current situation is going to harm us like a past situation did, we can have a tendency to be hypervigilant. Hypervigilance is not the same thing as awareness. Awareness requires keeping our eyes wide open, being honest with ourselves, listening to our intuition, trusting ourselves, but also trusting the people in our lives that have earned our trust, but not being foolish about it, right? So there's this like balance that happens with awareness. Hypervigilance is where we're just constantly waiting for someone to hurt us. And I think that's the danger with these first two cards that's sort of being highlighted. So if you've been feeling stuck, like if you're watching this right now and you've been feeling that stuckness, you've been feeling like you're just waiting for the other shoe to drop, and believe me, like I get it. But like if you're in that situation, the solution is to cultivate more awareness. Awareness of exactly what is the truth and the facts of your present circumstance. Who hasn't earned your trust? Can you lean into this current situation? Can you release that, or stop dipping that sort of brush into the paint of the past and painting it over your current situation? Can you actually sink into the present? And so this feels very evocative. I feel like I got a lot out of these 3 cards. The reason I go to energy obstacle advice is because it's such a good general reading that gets to the heart of a situation and gives such a clear direction. It gives the information I need. It tells me where I'm at now, where I'm stuck or where the problem is, and then what's the advice to move forward. It's very actionable. And so this is usually what I will do for myself if I'm going to pull like a generic daily draw. So it's my go-to spread. I've talked about it a lot on the channel. So this as a standalone, it spoke to me really, really, really well. And again, this might not be a fair comparison because Oracle by nature functions different than Tarot. So now let's see how they work together. So what I'm going to do, I'm a little bit weird about this, but sometimes if I'm not going to shuffle a ton, I like to separate the cards so that they don't go into the deck clumped. And then I'll just shuffle like normal. Okay, so how I would typically use Oracle and Tarot together is I'll pull Oracle in the center. I'm sure I and everybody else on YouTube who does this got this from Dawn Michelle. I'm confident. But anyways, she just started showing decks that way and I just love the layout and so it's stuck. But that's how I'll typically do it. So I'll pull an Oracle card in the center and then some Tarot around it. And then we'll start a conversation with all the cards and we'll see how it feels. And then we'll go from there. Sometimes I might pull extra cards and yeah, that's where we're going to go with it. So sitting right in the center, we have navigation. So we have this little squirrel who is looking like they're trying to find their way through all of these sort of tangled vines and leaves. There's some thorny brambles here in the background. So it hasn't necessarily been easy and it's confusing. Like the landscape is sort of confusing and they're trying to find their way. So that's kind of our starting point. We may be feeling a little bit lost. We may be feeling a little bit burdened or like we can't quite find a clear direction. So that's sort of our starting place, or that's the energy of the moment, is we're trying to navigate through something. We're in a situation, we're in a pickle. So again, if you're watching this, just consider if this feels like it's speaking to you, cool, roll with it. If it doesn't feel like it's speaking to you, that's cool. Let it be an example. It's all good either way. Bring my bug back into the frame. All right, so we're going to pull the Crow Tarot to either side, not with any fixed position, but just to sort of see if we can get more context about the situation or maybe a solution. Depends on what cards come up and how they feel. So we'll place one to this side and we have the King of Pentacles. And then on this side, we have the Ace of Wands. Okay, so here's what I'm feeling right away by this. When I see a king and an ace flanking in this order, king in the past, ace in the future, because I sort of keep a generic idea that this is sort of a timeline. It doesn't always, but when I see it like this in this order, it feels like it has a meaning for me. Again, I'm not feeling like I'm being specifically attracted to or drawn to the scene on the card to give me more context. I feel like I'm leaning into what I know of these cards. So in this case, it's almost like the cards are a decorative version of what I already know the tarot to be. I hope that makes sense because some decks I work with and they give me so much in the imagery. This one isn't doing that. So that's fine. But what I was going to say about the king to the ace is this feels very much like a similar vibe as if this was the world card and this was the fool card. So a king to me is somebody who sort of reached the pinnacle of their work or their effort or their pursuit or whatever it was they were doing. In the pentacle suit, this tells me that perhaps this person who's kind of trying to find their way and they're maybe feeling a little bit lost or directionless has perhaps reached sort of a point where they're not expanding or growing in whatever they're doing anymore. And possibly that's their job. Possibly it's a career. Possibly it's a project or something they were working on. But they kind of hit a place where they're like, okay, I feel like I've learned all that I came here to learn, or I feel like I've gotten out of this what I need to get out of it. And so I don't really know where to go next or what to focus on next. And I think that's kind of what our squirrel in the center and the navigation card is representing. And then we look to this card on the right and we see the Ace of Wands. So what is lacking to find a way? It's that inspiration. It's that purpose. It's that why. When I see the Ace of Wands, I think about purpose and passion and direction and the reason we do the things we do. Usually this is that spark that gets us going. It's the thing that lights us up and makes us feel alive inside. And that can be something to do with career. It can be a creative pursuit. It can be relationships even. It's like, why am I doing the thing that I'm doing? The Ace of Wands represents that why, but also that start and that spark. And so what this person, whoever this is resonating with, needs in order to get through this stuff is to acknowledge, first of all, that the King of Pentacles is coming in to say, hey, this is what you've learned. You've gotten to a point of mastery in this. You sort of have all of this well in hand. So the reason you feel lost is because you need something new to pursue. It's time to invite more play and invite more experimentation and try something different. Take yourself in a new direction. So this could be as strong of a message as you feel lost because it's time to like leave this job and go find a new one, like, or switch career paths. It could be that mundane and that specific, or it could be something where it's like you need that new spark. You need to dig into something new creatively so you can sort of find your way again. So let's assume that's what's happening, that we need to find that spark. And this is where card readings become more alive. So I feel like I've identified the situation. I've identified what is needed. So we need some closure on this. We need to step into this Ace of Wands energy. So I'm going to pull a card for like what comes after. So if like I had you as a client, you're watching this video right now, if you were sitting across from me at the table and we were having this reading, I want to maybe now know, okay, this is where you're going. Let's see if you do that. Like if you actually do acknowledge that this has probably come to a natural conclusion because you've learned everything you can, it's time to be a beginner again, or it's time to find that new spark, that new pursuit. This card is going to give us some clarity on what that new pursuit might look like, or what comes next if that's the path you travel, etc. And we have the acknowledgement card. So this came out of the Oracle deck, obviously the Thistle Oracle. So now we have acknowledgement. So acknowledgement now sits at the heart of the future. This idea of like, to me, this feels almost like validation or receiving some sort of like sign or recognition that yes, actually you are now on the right path. So I think that if this person were to follow the trajectory that this reading is sort of sending them down to, this is where they're headed, is to a place where they're going to feel a sense of like confirmation and acknowledgement that they're where they need to be. So out of curiosity, I'm just going to layer this, right? So now I'm going to pull 2 more tarot cards from the Crow Tarot, just to kind of stack onto this and add a little something, something. And then we have the 9 of Pentacles. So we see a financial abundance coming through with this new path as well. So we have acknowledgement, we have validation, we have a sense of like, this feels right now. And then we have the 9 of Pentacles. And we have the 6 of Wands. So we have a financial security and success. We have the wands showing this victory and the success. So to me, when the question after this first 3 card reading is, okay, but what happens if this person does follow the advice of this first reading and we get this reading with 9 of Pentacles, acknowledgement, and 6 of Wands, like that could not be more confirming that yes, this is the direction we want to flow with things. So let's evaluate from like a, I guess, neutral point of view. Did these decks read well together? Yes. I feel like aesthetically, they actually go quite nicely. If you have both of these in your collection, I feel like these work. And I think sometimes when we have decks like this, and this is something that one of the reasons I wanted to do this series is because we often will have things like, in this case, Stephanie Burrows. I tend to pair this deck with other Stephanie Burrows decks, with other Three Trees Tarot decks. I haven't really branched out much with what I pair it with, but I love the combination of keywords on this, in this. I think they're really beautiful. I think they're really poignant. I think the artwork is very evocative. It speaks to me. I don't feel like I have to struggle with it. It doesn't feel like an animal deck in the sense where I feel like I need to know about snake to understand that this card is about shelter, if you know what I mean. It feels like the messages are about what's happening, not who is on the card, which is very, very helpful when it comes to having a deck that takes you into like a nature-y place, into a sort of, this feels like a very fantastical little world, a little magical world, but it's also very nature, grounded in nature. And I don't feel shut out of this world. This is one of the ones that doesn't have a keyword. I forgot about that. I don't feel shut out of this world, even though I don't know a lot of animal lore. And that's what I love about this. The keywords are great. They really show me what's happening in the keyword is very visible on the card. Like we see the opportunity, right? We see this little mouse up here and seeing the berries that are right there within grasp, as long as this mouse is willing to take the risk on maybe a little thorn poke or two. We see planning in this card. We see decisions with these crossed paths. There's a lot of like visceral imagery that I think makes this just easy to work with as an oracle deck and a little delight in my collection. Now on the flip side, just working with this in this series, I immediately am like, you know what? This does really nothing for me. It's cute. Like it's neat to have a little crow tarot, I guess, but like it's not something that I would ever reach for on its own merit. It was great to pull in this, but like it's just, this is just a thing I now have to have. And these are the kinds of things I want to notice when I do these little mini reviews, is like, is this something I think about or want to reach for? I got it because we have balcony crows, but like, it's not like I'm doing a reading about the balcony crows. And if I was going to do a reading about the balcony crows, I could just as easily pull a Oak, Ash, and Thorn tarot, which I have 2 different copies of, including a mini. You know what I mean? I don't need this. So I think this is going to go on the chopping block, actually. And I wasn't sure how this video was going to go, how this new series was going to go. But it is definitely affirmed that this is not something I need. I probably shouldn't have picked it back up again. It was a little impulsive moment of mine. So this is going to go on the chopping block, along as part of, like, you know how in my collection I'm doing that. So I may or may not talk about it again in the future, but that's going to get put on the chopping block, and that's that. But Thistledown is very, very safe. I think it reads really well. It's very, very flexible in how you work with it. I imagine this would also pair really nicely with several things. I love pairing it with Oak, Ash, and Thorn and Smoke, Ash, and Embers. And because of its size, it actually pairs really well with the mini mini Oak, Ash, and Thorn, or the full size. And it also pairs well with Smoke, Ash, and Embers, obviously, because we see both the dragons and the creatures from the Oak, Ash, and Thorn all exist in this little deck. I love this little horse so much. Anyway, let me know what you think of this new series. I'm excited to sort of just have a reason to dig into things that I have or maybe haven't pulled in a while, to put things in strange combinations, to remind myself what it's like to work with the different decks in my collection. And as I go through this process, I may make some decluttering decisions here and there, but it'll give me another opportunity to share with you in real time how something works. And hey, maybe some of these like sample readings will resonate with somebody who's watching the video, and they might feel like, yes, that was for me. And if so, perfect, then that message was meant for you. But mostly it's kind of like a mini way to just test out some of these different decks and experiment. And it's something that actually, that reminds me that if in my membership here on the channel, my top tier, the Badass Unicorns, and I, we have a series called Test Driving the Tarot. And we go in hard, like interactive workshop style, on either a deck or a type of deck. And we usually build a practice with that specific thing or type of thing. And it's been really cool to pull something out and like really think about how it functions in real time and like build practices around it. This kind of reminds me of a light version of that, like a little peek into kind of what that kind of could be like. But here we're just seeing how these decks go together and separate, and how they feel and what I think about them. In some cases, maybe it's been a long time since I've reached for something, and we're just going to see how it shapes up. So thanks for hanging out with me. I'll try to do another one of these videos next month, as long as y'all enjoyed it, okay? And until next time, may your magic always shine from the inside out. Bye.